Hello, I'm Tim Shoebridge for Cherry Audio. I'd like to let you in on a little secret. A very, very, very long time ago, 1978, when I was this big, when I was this small, 1978 was the year when I heard for the very first time progressive rock music, when I heard for the very first time a band called Genesis, and when I heard for the very first time the sound of the synthesizer. Honestly, it was 1978 and it was due to this record here, Seconds Out by Genesis. Now, the synthesizer that features on this incredible double live album is not just any old synthesizer, it's this one. It's the ARP Pro Soloist. Right, so let's take a look at the front panel of Cherry Audio's Pro Soloist. Here it is in all its glory. There's a lot going on here that's not on the original Pro Soloist. I'll tell you that for nothing. We'll come on to those special features later on in the video. For now, let's concentrate on those presets, and we can see them here taking up most of the space here in the middle and across to the right. We've got a whole bunch of presets, and they're accessible by these little paddle switches. We can point them upwards for the upward preset and downwards for the downward preset. As you can see here, as I flick through, that my previous selection is overridden. You can choose just one preset at a time, like on the original. Now there are, I believe, 30 in total. They're categorized in a very traditional orchestral style. We've got reeds, we've got woodwinds, we've got brass, strings, percussion, and then fuzz guitar. Not very orchestral at all, is it? Fuzz guitar on the end there. Let's just listen to a couple of these. Bassoon sounds like this. Very synthesized bassoon. This is oboe. You'll hear there immediately there is some modulation, specific modulations on some of these presets that differ from others. This one's got a delayed vibrato kicking in. We'll get onto it later on, but the way that these different sounds are created inside the Pro Soloist is very, very clever. There's a whole bunch of resonators. Now, we talked about resonators with the PS3300 from Cherry Audio. Korg implemented resonators in their PS3000 range of synths, and other synthesizer manufacturers did as well. These resonators are basically resonant bandpass filters. And by setting specific frequencies, you can give different kind of tonal qualities for like orchestral sounds, the human voice, that kind of thing. So we'll get onto that stuff later on, but this is the oboe. Let's try flute. Very synthesizer-ish flute, isn't it? Now they're all very, very closely matching the original ARP Pro Soloist in terms of their sound, and they are very dry. Obviously there was no effects in the original ARP Pro Soloist. However, I'll let you in on a little secret. If you look at this section of the Pro Soloist here, it's called panel mode, and at the moment it's set to performance. So this top panel here is in performance mode. It's showing us the presets and some of the effects that we can apply, which we'll get onto in a sec. But just as a little bit of a secret, if you click on this button here called ARP FX, that's not ARP for ARP, that's ARP for arpeggio. You can see that now this top panel has changed completely. We've got a whole load new more controls. We've got a fully fledged arpeggio in here for this kind of thing. But we're not going to do that now. I'm more interested in all of this over here. It's all of these multi-effects, and this is, so similar with all of the other Cherry Audio products. They really pack them in with some wonderful effects. We've got a couple of different distortion effects. We've got a very fully fledged phaser. We've got a flanger and chorus section. We've got 3 different delays, and we've got 5 different reverb algorithms. So I'm just going to add a little bit of reverb. Well, that's a lot, isn't it? Let's dial it back. Something like that. Maybe let's add a little bit of tape echo as well. something like that. Sounds a lot nicer, doesn't it? Let's switch back to performance mode. Let's talk about some of the real-time performance controls that were available on the Pro Soloist, which are available in Cherry Audio's product as well. Look at these sliders here over to the left-hand side. We've got overall control of the volume. Brilliance, that is the filter cutoff. Now all of these sliders, in fact any of the controls here on any of Cherry Audio's products, you can assign them to a MIDI CC and control them from your MIDI controller keyboard, such as your mod wheel or whatever you want to do. And it's so easy to do that. So if you want to control this brilliant slider with my mod wheel, what I have to do is just right click on it, choose MIDI learn, and then just fiddle with the control that I want to use. So my mod wheel in this case, and now I've got full control over this brilliant slider. Now the next slider along is called touch sensitivity, and that is because the original ARP Pro Soloist had Aftertouch built into its keyboard. It was very rudimentary, very sort of like, you know, initial kind of design of Aftertouch back then in the 1970s, but it did work and it worked very well. And with the Pro Soloist, we have got control over so much about the sound with Aftertouch. Now this is mono Aftertouch because it was a mono instrument. But nevertheless, we've got this slider here, which is applied. You know, it's basically specifying the amount of Aftertouch that gets applied. Now, what it gets applied to is controlled by all of these switches up here. There's 8 of them, so we can apply Aftertouch to 8 different kind of effects, and in fact, we can have multiple effects being affected at the same time. So we've got some interesting names here. So we've got pitch bend, which is pitch bend. So that's a pitch bend up. Needs a little bit of practice on my part to get the best out of that, but anyway, it was a really great performance tool to be able to affect the pitch. Lamb Lies Down on Broadway album, it's used there with a lot of great effect. Next is something weird called wow. What does wow do? Wow. So immediately, without even applying the Aftertouch, it's applying a resonant filter to the sound. So it's actually changing fundamentally the preset sound already, as opposed to it off. And then the wow, when I press down and give it an Aftertouch response, is that little bit extra there. So that's wow. Then we have something called growl. Growl sounds like this. It's a very rapid tremolo or something. I don't know what that is. And obviously we do have control over the amount of it with this control here. It's a bit of kind of like a flutter tongue that someone playing a wind instrument would be able to create. So that is growl. Then we have brill, that's for brilliance, that is filter cutoff. Now, how obvious these effects are is all depending on the preset that you're applying it to, because different presets will have more low-pass filter applied than others. Actually, let's switch over to trumpet. Let's try trumpet. Now, one thing to point out, and I said before, that these presets here are designed to be as closely matching to the original Pro Soloist as possible, and those presets were dry. There were no effects on the original Art Pro Soloist. So when we switch from one preset to the next on the performance panel here, then our effects get turned off. They're not lost completely, they're just switched off. So to apply them again, I just go back to the ARP effects panel and then just turn them back on. The actual settings here, all these settings along the top here have been preserved. It's just the fact that they've been switched off. So now I've got my effects back. Switch over to the next one. Let's try volume. Makes the sound louder, as you would expect. Next along, wah wah. Okay. Okay, so this is a modulation effect, and actually these last three here are all modulation effects, as you can see by the little legend there and the titles. They're linked to a dedicated LFO. We've got control over the speed of it, and something called repeat. And it's already repeating itself. It's a lovely preset, that one. Does it remind you of anything? Let's move on to another one that might remind you of something. Let's go to the violin preset, and I'm going to put my effects back on for this one. A bit of plate reverb, a little bit of tape delay echo, and then I'm going to play something like this. Not quite what I want to play, but unfortunately I can't play what I want to play because we live in a corporate world. But this particular preset, with a little bit of delay and a little bit of reverb added, really makes me want to kind of get a little bit of a rhythm going on. Maybe something like this. Maybe not quite as obvious as this. Let's jazz it up a bit. That's a bit better. Maybe jazz it up a little bit more, actually. Don't want a copyright strike. Something like that. And then we're going to add a little bit of rhythm guitar. Like that. I've got my Mellotron. I've got my Pro Soloist. Let's play this. It's so much fun to have a trip down memory lane and play all these different Pro Soloist presets. It's really wonderful. And if that's all Cherry Audio had provided in their Pro Soloist software, then I'd be very, very happy indeed. But they didn't stop there. I've already shown you that they've added an arpeggiator and some multi-effects, but they've gone so much further than that. If we look at this panel mode area here, there are actually three buttons. We have a performance mode, we have our ARP effects mode, and we have something called edit. So let's click on edit. Now in edit mode, what we have here is a whole set of new controls. I have to say they look perfectly at home here on the Pro Soloist. The styling and everything is really in keeping with the rest of the synth. Now what these controls do is give us unfettered access to all of the analog circuitry that's inside a Pro Soloist. It really is an eye-opener for me to see what circuitry is inside the synth, how comprehensive it really was. let's take a look, starting over on the left-hand side. Left-hand side, we have an LFO. As I mentioned before, with some of the presets, they have a delayed modulation effect, so we have a delay control for bringing in the LFO. We've got a speed control, obviously, and then we have a choice of 4 different waveforms. Next comes the VCO section. Now, there's only one VCO inside the Pro Soloist, but it's a very comprehensive VCO section. There are just 2 waveforms to choose from, so a sawtooth and a square wave. I was reading somewhere that internally the VCO in a Pro Soloist is in very advanced circuitry. It actually only generates a square wave, or a pulse wave actually, and it generates that pulse wave at a very high frequency compared to the frequency that you want to play your notes at. And then what it does is it combines those pulse waves together using divide down technology to create a kind of a synthetic sawtooth. So if you were to look at the sawtooth under a magnifying glass, you'd see that it's kind of stepped like some steps. And so it generates these artificial sawtooth waveforms, but they're highly accurate, apparently. Anyway, we've got a sawtooth, we've got a square wave, and we can blend them how we like. And then the output from the VCO goes into a little dedicated high-pass filter here. That's to sort of like just get rid of that bottom end. I think it's only a 1-pole filter, but it just gets rid of that bottom end if you want to use it to sort of like help recreate those very brittle kind of reed and woodwind sounds that the synth is capable of. And then the signal passes into the main voltage controlled filter. Now, in the original Pro Soloist, this voltage control filter was a blatant rip-off of Bob Moog's 24 dB ladder filter. It was subject to some litigation, and ARP had to remove it from the Pro Soloist. So the very early models of the Pro Soloist have got this illegal filter inside, and it was the same actually with the 2600, wasn't it? The boys at ARP were bad boys, they really were in this regard. Anyway, we have this filter section, and we have the 24 dB ladder filter being emulated here in Cherry Audio software. So we have a frequency and we have resonance. It is self-resonant, but the way that the Pro Soloist was configured, it never went into self-oscillation at all, and that has been captured very accurately in Cherry Audio's emulation. These sliders, I haven't mentioned them here, but over with the VCO, and as we can see here with the VCF, they are allowing us to apply modulations. We can apply modulations with envelope generators and the LFO, pulse width modulation, frequency modulation, and then as far as the filter is concerned, we can apply filter cutoff modulation using the filters and LFO, velocity, the growl little circuit, dedicated circuit that we listened to earlier, and keyboard tracking as well with the filter. After the filter, we come on to the VCA section. Again, these sliders are allowing us to provide different modulations, envelope generators, LFO, and velocity. And then we have got over here, because I've mentioned them already, we've got envelope generators. We've got 2 envelope generators. We've got a full ADSR and then a smaller envelope generator, which has just got attack and release phases. So there's something that I haven't mentioned, and that's kind of over here. And it's this Resonator Bank. Now, I did allude to the fact that there are resonators inside the Pro Soloist. Here you can see which ones are active for the current preset that I've chosen. So we've got 3 that are active, but there are actually 5 in total, and you can flick between them by just clicking on the tabs there, and then you can see that these controls are moving depending on what the resonator is set to. So there are 5 resonators in total. For the monophonic voice of the Pro Soloist, there are no less than 10 filters that can be applied to the sound. So there's massive opportunity here to sculpt the sounds and try and recreate, obviously, orchestra instruments such as woodwinds and brass and reeds, etc. Now, just coming back to these resonators, we have a frequency control and a resonance control, and in order to help you sort of like pick out specific frequencies, there's a little preset menu option here. If I tap on it, you'll see that it comes up with a bunch of different presets for different kinds of cello sounds, violin sounds, and some electric instruments, oboe, horn, etc. So you can use these as a quick way to get the settings that you might want to, and this is on a per resonator basis, so each one can be set to a specific preset, or of course you've got complete control over it yourself. So with all of this control, it's hands-on control, it allows you to really go far beyond the 30 presets that the Pro Soloist, the original Pro Soloist, had, and create any presets you like. And Cherry Audio have really gone to town, as they always do, with their own sort of factory presets. There's a whole ton of them to choose from, a whole load. I'm not going to go through them and pick them out. That's for you to do. Download this software and play around with the presets and hear what this synth is capable of, far beyond those original 30 factory presets of the ARP Pro Soloist. And I have forgotten to mention, over on the right hand side here is a mod matrix. It's got 6 slots in it. You can choose a source, you can go via a second controller, and then you've got a destination. I haven't counted how many there are, but you've got access to all of the the analog components that were in the original Pro Soloist here, with all of these different destinations and tons of sources as well. Now obviously this mod matrix wasn't there in the original Pro Soloist. In fact, none of these controls were there in the original Pro Soloist. It's all been provided by Cherry Audio to allow you to access the really powerful synth engine that is inside this wonderful instrument. No, your ears were not deceiving you. That was not the sound of a monosynth. It was the sound of a polysynth. Just a few more things to mention about the Pro Soloist from Cherry Audio, like they normally do with a monosynth. As well as giving us the authentic mono recreation of that synth, they also provide us with polyphonic capability. And that's what we got here. At this section here, the keyboard controls, mono by default. With mono we've got retrigger or legato modes, and then we have poly mode, so we can switch to something that we can just really just wonder, what would the Pro Soloist have sounded like if it had been a polysynth? Well, it would have sounded like this. Sounds absolutely wonderful. And now that we are in poly mode, a couple more things, just 2 more things I want to mention. Like Cherry Audio do with their other products, not only do we have the synth engine emulation of what was there in physical form all those years ago, but they've given us a layer mode. It's this section here in the middle. We've got layer controls and a layer mode, and you can see with this particular patch that it's not a single patch, it's a double patch, so it's layered on top of each other. I've basically created 2 different patches, and I can spread them in the stereo field and come up with a big, warm, gorgeous sounding stereo patch. So that's what we've got here. We've got layer mode, we've got poly mode, and because we've got poly mode, and because the Pro Soloist really is a wonderful performance synthesizer with Aftertouch, the other thing that Cherry Audio have done is not only provide us with mono Aftertouch capability, but poly Aftertouch capability as well. So if I go back to that performance mode here, all of these touch sensor effects are now available to you in polyphonic Aftertouch mode, which is absolutely brilliant. Right, I just want to interrupt this video just to interrupt myself, just to clarify here that if you're going to use the Pro Soloist in polyphonic Aftertouch mode, then you do need a MIDI controller keyboard that can generate polyphonic aftertouch messages. In the example I'm about to show you, I'm going to be using my Osmos, but there are some other keyboards out there that do generate polyphonic aftertouch messages. Now, if you don't have one of those keyboards, then all is not lost. There is a kind of a simulation mode that Cherry Audio have provided. It's this button here. It's called Last, which basically means last note priority, and it will simulate for you polyphonic aftertouch. Apply it to just the last note that you've played when you press down on a monophonic aftertouch keyboard. Now, all of this information is in the user guide, so please do check it out if you have any queries at all. Just wanted to get that all clear, and back with the video.